Welcome back to the TOWKA Talks podcast. Today, I am joined by Brock Kelly. He is a YouTuber, D2 student athlete at Mississippi College, the founder of the Intentions Over Everything Club, as well as a friend. Brock, welcome to the podcast.
Dude, happy to be here. Excited to dig into whatever we dig into today, and excited to have a good conversation over the next however long we're here.
So let's just get into YouTube for a second because you have a pretty big following on social media just in general. What kind of led you to wanting to start a YouTube channel and record basically your day in the life and your journey as a student athlete?
Yeah, so a lot of that, I started my YouTube channel whenever I was in 11th grade in high school. And so at that point, I was watching like running YouTubers that were popular at the time, like Ryan Trahan or Zach Levitt or guys like that. And I was like, wait a second, I think I could bring a camera along to a track meet and just record something just for the fun of it. And so that decision, that thought of, okay, I want to bring a camera along to a track meet and record something and see if I can do this as well, led me to start a YouTube channel and start making videos. And I really enjoyed the process of editing and creating the content. And I was like, this is something that I kind of want to keep doing. And I just kept doing it, did it all throughout 11th grade, 12th grade, and then made it freshman year in college, kept making content while I was documenting my journey as like a new student athlete and just going to cross country races and stuff, just still bringing the camera along, just making videos that were fun. And throughout that journey, just kind of kept getting better at it and built up a following in the last few years as I've gained more knowledge on the sport and more knowledge on video creation to the point where people are now wanting to follow along. And it's been a cool thing to do. And off the back of that, off the back of the YouTube, I've built the brand Over Everything Athletics Club, and that's like something that I kind of always wanted to do, always in the back of my head. Even whenever I first started doing YouTube stuff back in 11th grade, it was like in the back of my mind, I want to eventually start a business off of this somehow and create something cool. Even if it fails, I still learned something about starting a business, and I learned kind of the ins and outs of that. So those were kind of my thoughts there. So yeah.
As far as like putting yourself out there and getting in front of a camera, talking about some things that are obviously like running related and the battles that you go through as a student athlete, has it been hard to kind of keep your focus at times because of the aspects of training and the hardships that you go through, just with running in general? Has it been kind of hard to keep your focus on what you're doing in the moment and then also trying to build a following and build a business in the long run?
Yeah, it's definitely been hard to balance everything as a student athlete. As you'll find, the two people that I mentioned earlier who were content creators, Ryan Trahan and Zach Levitt. Ryan still does YouTube stuff. Zach is Ryan's editor now. So they were both doing separate things. They kind of collided together. They both dropped out of college because it was too hard to balance the content creation as well as pursuing business ventures as well as like the student athlete thing. It was just so hard for them to balance all of that together. And so they both ended up dropping out of college. And yeah, that is a testament to how challenging it can be to create balance in social media and on this platform, on YouTube, on Instagram, whatever it is, whatever those platforms are. It can be very hard to create balance. And over the years, I've found that it is very challenging to make videos while I'm doing all these things because I'll want to sit down and edit a video for 3 hours in the afternoon, but then I have to work on accounting homework or I have to do something that is required of me from school or we have weight room or whatever it is. It's like all these different things come into play and it's like you have to learn how to allocate your time well, and it can be really hard. And over the years it has been really hard, and there's been times where I haven't posted for months and then I'll come back and I'll post a few videos and it's like, oh wait, he's back, and then I'll go ghost for another couple months just because life gets busy and things get challenging. And that's definitely been the case on YouTube for me. And it wasn't really until like last year that I was like, okay, I'm gonna dig into this because I last year I had the injury and stress fracture and everything back last fall, and so I had a really successful summer of training leading into the fall. Had a stress fracture in the fall, and then I was like, okay, what am I gonna do now? And over that whole summer, I was documenting the journey. I was making YouTube videos, like building up to running 100 miles a week and feeling like I was building a lot of fitness. That's actually where I met Austin, I think, for the first time, was out in Boulder that summer. And then once I got back, I was hurt, and at that point, I was like, okay, I don't want to just make YouTube videos about an injury. Like this is kind of pointless. So I decided, okay, how can I create value for an audience? And then at the same time, I was just kind of like, I'm bored. I want to make videos, and so I started the Daily Mile series on Instagram. Started making these videos every single day for 100 days is what it ended up being, and that I learned a lot from that journey and from that consistency, and I learned what it looked like to build an audience, and I learned how to communicate well with that audience and how to provide value to the people that were watching based upon the things that I had learned over the years, whether that was running or if it was faith related or if it was relationships or whatever it was. It was like I just want to talk about these experiences in a way that's unique to me and unique to my own experiences, and share that information with the people of Instagram, and also do it in a way that's a creative outlet for myself. So throughout this whole process, there's been a lot of times where it's been up and down and all around. It's been very challenging to stay consistent, but I've noticed that the moments where I'm the most consistent are the ones that yield the highest, I guess, the highest profit, the highest. They have the highest yield overall, and so um, it's just keeping that in mind as I'm creating content every day.
What would you say has been the hardest part for you as far as your journey in YouTube, like as a creator? Has it been the getting more familiar with the editing and the posting consistently? Has it been more the trying to be as genuine and valuable to your followers and to people who watch your videos for the first time? Or is it kind of something completely different?
Mm, I don't really know, honestly. It's just it every time you go onto the platform to create something, there's a whole new set of challenges, and it's a whole new set of things that you'll find out. And I think it's that way with any creative endeavor. And as you make more content, you start to find that you're just problem solving is what creativity is. It's problem solving and problem solving and problem solving. So whenever you think you have it figured out once, it's like, oh no, there's a whole new set of problems and there's a whole new set of things you have to figure out. And it's just figuring out the new set of problems every time you go and you make a video. So I don't think there's anything in particular that's been like, there's nothing in my mind that is like, oh yeah, this was like a really challenging point. It was just kind of like the whole process was in and of itself challenging because it forces you to come up with solutions to problems that you never even you never really even knew existed. And uh, it's yeah, it's just the whole process is challenging and has its own set of unique challenges, I'd say.
So, what was the inspiration behind the Daily Mile? Because I myself follow you on Instagram and I will occasionally watch it when I'm able to, and I'm always inspired by it. I'm not just saying that because you're on my podcast. It's truly great, valuable information. And I feel like not only as a runner can you benefit from watching it, but also just as a human being. So, what was kind of the inspiration behind making those videos?
So the Daily Mile, a lot of that I kind of already touched on it a little bit, but a lot of that was just me. I was just kind of bored after I had the stress fracture and stuff, and I started making this daily series, and it was a series that documented my return to sport pretty much. And initially, it wasn't really documenting the return to sport. Initially, it was just like I just want to make a video documenting my life every day. And then I realized as I'm documenting my life every day, I am slowly returning to sport. And what I was doing at that point, I would go to the pool every day and I would swim a mile. And when the series first started, that's what the name came from. It was the Daily Mile because I would go to the pool every day and swim a mile to try to maintain some fitness. And through that whole journey, ended up just building fitness back up. Showed, okay, right now I'm swimming in the pool on episode 3, and I'm doing the same thing on 4 and 5 and 6 and 12, but now I'm starting to get back into a little bit of running on episode 20 or 30 or whatever it was. I don't remember exactly the numbers and stuff. And it was like whenever I started to get back into a little bit of running, even whenever it was just a half mile, it was like, okay, this is just like this slow journey. And it had a level of relatability to it where the people that were watching along the way, I've had a lot of people approach me at track meets and other places out in public that are like, oh, wait, you're the Daily Mile guy. I was dealing with an injury at that same time. I had a stress fracture in my sacrum, or I had also had a tibial stress fracture. I also had like whatever it was, and they're like, "Oh, I was dealing with an injury at that time, and that really helped me." That whole series was like perfectly timed. And I've heard stories like this. I've heard probably 30, 40 stories like this of just people reaching out and saying, "Man, that really helped me in that whole time." And I would say like just the inspiration behind it was after I kind of started to get a little bit of traction with it, which was I think episode 46 was the one that really started. It was like 45 episodes and nothing happened. I was getting 2,000 views a video, which I already had like 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 followers at that point. So it was kind of like just some people were seeing it. I was getting a few hundred likes, and I was like, yeah, okay, like whatever. And then episode 46, it hit like, I don't know, 150,000 views. And then the next one was like 200, and the next one was 500, and it just kept going up. And I was like, whoa, this is crazy. Now I'm starting to actually reach an audience. How can I capitalize on this? How can I actually try to help the people who are watching, and how can I provide them with information that I think is valuable that can help them in their lives? And it was just kind of that shift after the popularity started, and I was like, okay, what can I do with this platform now? Like, because you think of all these things as you're building up your following. You're like, okay, once I get to this number of followers, I'll be good. Or once I get to this number, and I was in this exact situation of like, okay, I got to this number of followers, I got to this number of viewers. Now what do I do to make it continue to grow? And the consistency really helped, posting every day. And if a video sucked, then it didn't matter because I could just post another one the next day. And if that one sucked too, then I would post another one 2 days later. And it was like the consistency helped so much because if a video wasn't good, I could rely on that consistency to continue to keep me relevant, which would allow me to continue to reach people and impact their lives as I continued throughout the whole series. But the series itself was super challenging, and it was one of the hardest things I've done. I think it tested me in a lot of ways. And once I got to episode 100, I was like, I think I'm good now. I think 100 is good. I'm gonna continue making these videos every now and then whenever I get the chance. I'm just gonna focus on running and try to make a few YouTube videos here and there and have fun with that. But yeah, that's kind of how the whole story of the Daily Mile, I guess.
Talk to us about the beginning, like what kind of led you into the sport, and then did you grow up playing sports? Just kind of talk about your upbringing a little bit as far as athletics go.
Yeah, so I first sport I ever did, I think, was T-ball. I was a big baseball guy all the way up until maybe eighth grade. I just played like park and rec baseball throughout like all of my elementary school days, and went from T-ball to coach pitch to kid pitch to whatever the heck else there is. I don't even remember, but did all those things, and I really loved baseball, and it was just so much fun. I just loved the sport itself, but ultimately found that I was better at running, and honestly, I was better at swimming than I think I was at running. So from third grade to sixth grade, I think I swam, and I was really good at swimming, but I hated being in the pool, and I just hated that feeling of like not being able to breathe, and it just was one of the worst feelings ever. I was like, okay, this isn't anything I want to do. It's like even if I was good at it, I was like, this isn't really where I want to be. And so I found running probably in fifth grade, and of course all throughout elementary school we'd run in PE or whatever every now and then. It'd be like, okay, how fast can you run a 400, or how fast can you run a mile on the track, or whatever it was. And we would have these tests, and I was always like pretty decent at it. And then fifth grade, we had a fifth grade cross country program, and the same PE teacher was the one who led the cross country program. So she was like, "Come out and run cross country." And we met up a couple times a week, and we did some inter squad meets and stuff. And the cross country coach at the time of the like middle school and high school reached out and was like, "Hey, like whenever you get in seventh grade, we want you on the team. Like you were the guy that we need to help this program." And so whenever I got into seventh grade, I joined the team officially, and that was like I ran my first race. It was actually a home meet. We came from a small 1A private school we were supposed to be in a private school division, but we got out of the private school division and we were in the public school division. So we were here competing against other public schools that were like 1 through 3A at this race, and it was hosted by us. We had our own cross country course that was pretty tough, like one of the toughest in the state. And that was my first race in August. It was 100 degrees outside. It was the worst conditions you can imagine. So hilly and 100 degrees. And I'm like, all right, well, I guess I'm going to try to race these guys. And I remember getting out in that race and being in almost dead last, and then slowly just picking people off throughout the race until I got to the last quarter mile, and I was in second place. And I was like, whoa. And then I passed the final guy in the last couple hundred meters, and that was kind of like, wait a second, I might be all right at this sport. And so from there, continue to run and continue to run pretty fast throughout middle school, and leveled up to varsity in seventh grade as well. So my coach moved me up to running the 5K instead of the 3,200 or whatever we'd run in the junior high races, and did that for a while, and continued to run 5Ks. And then I officially quit baseball in 8th grade and started doing track whenever I quit baseball. And that was kind of a big turning point because I didn't know if I would like track, and then I think track became the thing that I really liked the most. So I started pursuing track wholeheartedly, and it was just so much fun to get out there and run 4 laps or whatever, and just rip it and leave everything I had on the track in that point. And yeah, that's kind of been my running story. I guess was middle school started running, or 7th grade started running competitively. Continued to do that through 8th grade. Ended up getting a scholarship to run at Mississippi College once I got to my senior year in high school, and then went to Mississippi College because I felt like it was a good fit for me. I felt like it was the right environment. It's a Christian school, had the right coach, had the right team, and I was like, this is something I want to be a part of. I feel like we're building something great here, and I wanted to be a part of that, and so I joined the team, and I've been on the team for the last 5 years. This is my 5th year now, and it's been a good experience. So
What kind of setbacks have you been through in your running career that have not only taken a toll on you physically, but mentally as well?
definitely been some setbacks. My freshman year in college was probably my first time having any real setbacks. I had like IT band issues after I came in, and I was, like I said, in high school I was a pretty decent runner, and I came into college and realized these guys are really really good runners, and I am not up here yet, even though I wanted to be. So I was willing to run really hard, and like I had a willingness. The mind was willing, but the body was not able, and my mind was willing to push to the furthest extent that I possibly could, but my body broke in the process, and I started having some IT band issues, and then my Achilles flared up, and so I was out for most of my freshman year. After we had a couple cross country races, but then after that I was gone. I was out from then until May pretty much, and that was a challenging experience, and so that was kind of the first setback I had to deal with, and I don't know if I handled it necessarily well. I mean, you're a freshman in college and you're trying to navigate school and you're trying to navigate a new location, new place. You're away from your parents, and it was just like I don't think I handled it super well. Um, but then got back into it sophomore year, continued to run, continued to get stronger, and there were definitely some setbacks. There were definitely some setbacks sophomore year. I wasn't great in cross country, but I had some breakthroughs on the track. And then junior year, I ended up I had the flu toward the end of cross country season, and that was a pretty major setback, and that kind of took a toll on me mentally. And then going into that next indoor season, I was determined, okay, I have to do something different. I have to change the way I'm approaching these things, and that's when I started the brand, the OE Athletics Club, and everything. That all started from that place of, okay, I'm injured now, or I'm not injured now, but I was sick and I didn't perform how I wanted to, and that didn't feel good. So I don't want to feel like that again. So I want to start practicing better habits and uh, make sure that I'm taking the right actions to be the best athlete that I can be. And so that was the intentionality behind what I was trying to do there, and ended up having a very successful indoor track season and one of my most successful outdoor track seasons too. And then ended up getting hurt senior year, kind of like we talked about a little bit. Had that great summer of training leading into senior year, stress fracture after the first meet or so, and then from that point forward was injured all the way. Started the daily mile, was injured all the way until I don't know, March really. Then I ran a 5K in March, and that was the first time I kind of got back on the track and raced something fast. And yeah, there's the whole sport is just ups and downs. Everything in the sport is ups and downs. There's not a single, if you can't talk to anybody. There's nobody who's ever done this sport and said, "Oh yeah, it's just been a steady ride the whole time. I've just progressively just gotten better over every year, over and over, and didn't have any setbacks." There's never been anybody who can say that. You can do it through high school, but once you get to a more competitive level, it doesn't work. There's nobody who can say that. Um, and yeah, it's now I'm in a position where I had a little bit of a rocky cross country season this year, and but now I've gotten bounced back, and I've taken the right actions to set myself up for a successful final indoor and outdoor track season. So
Would you say as a Division II school in the NCAA that anytime you get to go up against any of the really, really good Division 1 teams or even Division 1 programs in general in any race, cross country or track? Does it kind of motivate you more to want to push yourself even further in the race to try to stay up with those guys or even beat them? Is there kind of like that competitive fire within you?
I mean, sometimes it's cool whenever you can go to like a big meet in Boston. Boston always has one of the biggest track meets. They have a big indoor facility that at Boston University, BU, and it is one of the fastest tracks in the world. And our coach, maybe sophomore and junior year, took a few of us there, and we got to race, and it was cool to just be in the race and be like, oh, this guy's from Duke, and this guy's from Texas, and this guy's from Harvard, and you're in the heat with these guys, and you're like, wait a second, I'm in this mix now. This is interesting. It is, there is a motivating factor to that, but I think at the end of the day, it really comes down to what you're capable of, as opposed to it can't be that can't be the main driving force behind what you're doing. It has to be there has to be something bigger there than, oh, I just want to like beat these D1 guys. It's like, yeah, like that's cool that you're in the race with the D1 guys, and I guess you can get some confidence from that, but I think there has to be something bigger going on there. There has to be bigger motivating factors than just those external things.
What drives and motivates you in your life, not only from a business or work standpoint, but from a running and a life standpoint as well?
Yeah, so I literally just made a Daily Mile video about this today, and the main thing that drives me is my relationship with Christ, and it creates purpose in my life. It creates purpose behind the actions that I'm taking, and because I have purpose in those actions, I'm able to stay motivated. And whenever it's not like in a prosperity gospel type way of like, oh, follow Christ and you'll be motivated and you'll live a purposeful life and you'll achieve great things and you'll run faster than you've ever run in your life. It's nothing like that. It's like my actions through the highs and lows and ups and downs now have meaning. And it's like whenever you look at Paul, whenever he was like, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me, this is him after he's been through the highs and the lows and the ups and downs. He knew how to be tested. He knew how to be brought low and how to be lifted up high. And he knew all those things. And through all of those moments, he can do all things through Christ who strengthens him. And it was more so, it wasn't from a prosperity gospel type way of follow me and I will give you all this. It was more so like, I know how to be content with where I am and I know what it looks like to lead a life with purpose. And in a lot of ways, I think my life is the same way. It's like I have that relationship with Christ, and that is the center of what I do. And because I have that relationship, my actions now have meaning. It's something that's bigger than those times and the goals and the beating the D1 guys. And it's like those things are fun. It's fun to beat the D1 guys. It's fun to run 4:09 in the mile like I did last weekend. It's fun to be All American. It's fun to do these things. But if your entire identity and worth is built on just these things, then there's not really that's not a good thing to build your identity and worth on. There has to be something that's greater than that because those things are fleeting. Those things they just won't give you value in the long run, and you have to understand that. And that's something that I've had to understand in the last few years. And sometimes it's hard. Sometimes it's easy to fall into that trap of like, oh yeah, like my entire value and worth and identity is built on these times and these things that I'm doing, and you try to build it on your actions, but the truth is it can only really be built on Christ and who your identity is in Christ, and from that place you compete freely. That's one of the biggest things we talk about at Mississippi College is this idea of competing freely because we have our identity in Christ. And whenever you step on the line, even if you have like yesterday we had a really hard workout where it was like 800, 400, 400, 600, 300, 300. And 844, then we had 6 minute rest, and then 633, and we had between the 800s and the 400s we had like 60-second rest, and then between the 600s and the 300s we also had 60-second rest. And so we're running mile pace for these things. We came through, we ran like a 203 800, we ran a 61-second 400, 62-second 400, and then we ran a 129 600 and a 30 I'm trying to know, and then a 45 300 and a 42 300. And so this was an incredibly challenging workout, and we knew it was going to be really hard. We knew it was going to be one that really tested us and pushed us to the limits. And we were about to start the workout, and my coach pulled us aside and he said, guys, this isn't about the splits and the times. He said, we have these goals in mind, we have these splits and times in mind. He said, I just want you to go out here and I just want you to run freely. I want you to step onto the track and I want you to push yourselves. And if you have your heart set in the right place, you will not be disappointed with the results. And I said, oh, that takes a big weight off of this. I had this expectation of, oh, I need to run 2:03. Oh, I need to run 61, 62 seconds in the 400. And it was like this expectation was like weighing me down. And then he said this, and it was like, just compete freely and put your heart in the right place and you'll be fine. And I was like, oh, that's freeing. That allows you to step into something that's way bigger than trying to hit these splits and times and paces and stuff, and allows you to, on race day, to step into that. And you no longer have those expectations weighing you down. It's like, of course you want to go after those goals, of course you want to try to achieve those big things, but whenever you can take the expectation out of it and compete truly to what you're capable of because you have your identity in Christ and you know that's where your value is and that's where you find your worth. You aren't trying to find your worth from these external things. You're able to actually compete in a way that glorifies him. And that's so much of what I feel like I've built my life on, and what we try to talk about, we try to reiterate that to the team every single day, and we try to keep that in the conversation because you have to be reminded of these things. It's so easy to look over and it's so easy to forget. Like, it's so easy to forget the gospel whenever you're stuck in the middle of a 800-meter rep and you're trying to fight for your life and you're hurting so bad. It's so easy to forget the reason you're out there and the reason you're competing and what your motivating factors are. But if you can remind yourself over and over again, we're forgetful people, we're forgetful beings. You have to remind yourself over and over again, and the more you can do that, the better you're going to end up being. Like that's you just have to remind yourself of that, not in a prosperity gospel type way, like I was saying, but more so in like, this is where my identity is, and whether I'm brought high or brought low, doesn't matter. I'm still going to compete for Christ through this, and that's where my identity is. So
I love how humbly you said you just ran a 409 mile when the majority of people watching this or who are out in the society couldn't even fathom that pace just to begin with. But one of my favorite verses in the Bible is humility comes before honor. And everything to reiterate you just said basically is staying humble and honoring God no matter what the results of the workout or the race are at the end of the day. So I love that that's y'all's mentality, yours in particular. Do you feel like, though, that in the past, or even right more presently, when you've failed in workouts, failed in races, something's happened to you in your life that it's been hard to sometimes like refocus your mind on what really truly matters?
yeah, we actually had a conversation with the team about this yesterday. We had a devotional that talked about this specific thing, how our identity is not built on our accomplishments. It's like it is a very hard thing to grasp because our human desire, our hearts automatically think, okay, God is glorified only whenever we compete only whenever we run 409, only whenever we win, only whenever we compete this, like hit these numbers and hit these targets, and he can't be glorified in the other things. And it's like, if we're trying to limit God just to our athletic lives, then what are we doing in the other 22 hours of the day? Like, what are we doing in those other times whenever we have those relationships with other people, whenever we're glorifying him in church, whenever we're going to church and praising him and singing these worship songs? And what are we doing whenever we're having these conversations with friends and we're trying to uplift him through these conversations, and we're having good and meaningful conversations? There's other moments in life beside your athletic endeavors that allow you to glorify him. And I think so often we think that only he can only be glorified through our winning. And the truth is, he can be glorified through all aspects. He can be glorified if we lose, if we win, if we are injured, if we're sitting on the bench, if we aren't competing. Like, if we aren't competing at all, he can still be glorified in that. Based upon, we could cheer on our teammates and show the love of Christ through cheering on our teammates, and God is glorified through that. Even whenever we're sitting there and we have a broken shin, it's like those moments are so much larger than just the moments that we spend competing. And once you kind of start to grasp that, it's easier. Like I said, you have to remind yourself of these things. You have to constantly be meditating on scripture. You have to constantly be in the word. That's one of the things that I always tell people. That's one of the things my pastor always reiterates. He's like, you have to constantly be in the word. Sorry about that. I think I got a notification, but it said you have to be constantly in the Word, and you have to constantly be reading Scripture because whenever your heart is set on those things, that's what is going to come out. Like that's whenever your mind is set on Scripture, whenever your heart's set on Scripture, that's how your life is going to be lived. And whenever you adopt those as truths, that's what your fruits are going to be. And if we can have that as a foundation for our actions, whether we win or lose or whatever it is, whatever the circumstances are, whether it's terrible or whether it's fantastic, if we can have Scripture and that foundation in Christ as the foundation, and we remind ourselves of why we're competing, then it's not as tough to handle the loss. The losses aren't quite as tough, and the wins are still sweet. It's like the wins are still. It doesn't take away from the wins. It doesn't, but it sweetens it dampens the losses, and it allows us to continue moving forward and continue building momentum in the sport that we love. And that's in my mind one of that in my mind is just so important.
Now I have to bring this up because it happened obviously a few days ago. You just got engaged, sir.
I did, yes.
Can you walk us through what the journey, I guess, has been with your now fiance? Kind of talk about the how you guys met, and then the struggles or the journey has been together to leading up to where we're currently at.
Yeah, I mean, there's been a lot that's happened. So we first started dating. We were in economics class together, and we. I don't think I've talked about this on a podcast or anything. So first time. This is the viewers are getting to hear this story. We were in an economics class together. We didn't sit together, but she was like over a little ways, and I think at one point I somehow followed her on Instagram or something, and she posted something on her Instagram story, and it was like the quote from Johnny Cash that says I can't even remember what the quote is. It says like the best part of the morning is gosh. It said I can't remember what the quote is. Now I feel stupid, but it was something about like heaven is coffee with her in the morning or something like that. And she posted this quote, and I was like, well, let's get coffee or something. And it was just something stupid. And she said, okay, yeah, let's go get coffee. And so we got coffee, and we sat at the coffee shop for like 2.5 hours or something. And then after that, we came back and we sat in the car and we just kept talking for like another few hours. And we were, I think we just sat and talked. We were probably hanging out for like 8 hours that day, which is pretty crazy. And at that point, I was like, okay, like we're probably gonna start dating pretty soon. Like this is. I feel like this went really well, and I think she thought it went really well too. So from that point forward, we started dating, and I soon found out a few days later that she was planning on going to Europe, going to London for a study abroad program for the next 3 months. So we kind of like agreed to kind of start dating after a few days, and then she was like, "Yeah, I'm going to London for like 3 months. Bye." I was like, "Okay." So she told me this, and she was kind of like scared to tell me because she thought I was just gonna be like, "Oh, okay, I guess this is it." But no, I was like, "Okay, I think I can handle that." And so we would like FaceTime and I talked to each other on the phone pretty often, and we kind of just stuck it out through that. And at that point, I was in the middle of like track season and stuff, and so um, it was a tough experience. But then we got back together for she came back from London, and we were back together in person. And then I took the internship with Tin Man Elite, and I went out to Boulder, and I was there for 2 more months. And so from that point, we were also FaceTiming again for the next 2 months. And once I got back from that in August, we were finally back together for a while. And so we were actually in person together at the point. We were both at school and we were continuing classes and stuff. And so we were able to hang out much more often and see each other much more often. And that was a great experience. And yeah, from that point forward, kind of just stuck it out. And that following summer, I also went out to Boulder again. So we had a couple more months where it was kind of like remote and kind of long distance, but we were able to make it through that summer pretty easily. It wasn't that rough, and it was honestly it's been a really good experience. And so I felt like she was after we stuck it through all that, and she is one of the most loving and caring people I've ever met, and she is selfless in so many ways, and I just felt like she was the right one for me, and it was like I could tell her love for the Lord was large, and I felt like that was who the Lord was calling me to be with. And so That point, I was like, yeah, let's get engaged. So we're planning on getting married soon.
So did everything go according to your plan as far as the engagement, as far as
Yeah.
like
So
everything that day?
part of that, I asked for a father's blessing probably back in November ish, early November, and then me and her went to Copenhagen. My friend Zach lives in Copenhagen. I wanted to go see him because he like moved out. He moved to Copenhagen to get a master's degree. So he's like from Philly. I think he's from Philly. He's from Philly. I was hanging out with him in Boulder all summer, and then he moved to Copenhagen. I was like, dude, I'm gonna come see you in Copenhagen. And then Mary Grace was like, oh, I want to come see you too. I want to go to Copenhagen. That sounds awesome. And so I was like, okay, we'll go to Copenhagen. And so we went to Copenhagen. So I was gonna propose there, and then I was like, yeah, this doesn't make any sense. And Zach was really busy, so he wouldn't have been able to like take photos or anything, depending on the circumstances. So it's like, okay, well, maybe Copenhagen's not going to be the place. And she wanted it to be private and wanted it to be like a sweet moment. I was like, I just don't think it's going to happen here. And so I got back, and then maybe a few weeks later, I was like, hey, we were planning on going to the beach for New Year's. And I texted her and I was like, hey, do you want to go down to the beach like a day or two early? Like a day early, and we can stay. We have some family friends that live in Mobile, Alabama area, and we were gonna stay with them. And me and her have been there with the family friends before, and they just have like it's like a nice place like right on the bay, and it's really pretty. And I was like, okay, like I could propose there, like that'd be good. And so I texted her. I said, hey, do you want to go down like a day or two early? I wasn't gonna tell her what it was for. I was just like, you want to go down a day early to the beach? And she was like, I think I'm gonna stay with my parents for a little bit longer. And I was like, all right, cool, you can do that. And so I didn't like question it. I was like, okay, like I want her to be surprised whenever it happens. So then I decided, okay, like I gotta find a new time. And so last Sunday, like 2 Sundays ago, because I proposed this past Sunday, but the Sunday before that, I was gonna do it then. And I got back from the track meet and stuff, and so I was like, okay, Sunday's gonna be good. And I was looking at the forecast though, and it was like 40 degrees and raining all day. I was like, okay. So I had a photographer booked and everything, but it was 40 degrees and raining all day. So after, like, I think it was like Wednesday of that week, I texted the photographer and I was like, I don't think Sunday's gonna work. And she was like, well, we can move it to the next Sunday. And so we moved it to this past Sunday, and we had everything set up. I did it right by a lake, like right by her house. And so we did it there. It was super sweet, super like intimate moment. It was just like this, it was very private, nobody else really around. And so that's exactly what she wanted. And I think she was really excited about the whole thing and the way it all ended up panning out. And so, yeah, that was kind of the story. I think it like I said, it was up and down like a few different times. And I told her about all these circumstances. I was like, yeah, I was gonna do it in Copenhagen, then I was gonna do it at the river, and then she was like, what the heck? And I was like, yeah, well, but yeah, it ended up working out well, and we ended up making it. It was a sweet moment. So.
What advice would you give to young Christian guys who are maybe in high school or college that are either struggling with dating or wanting to maybe take things to the next level as far as getting married? What have you learned in your life that you want to give wisdom wise to the other guys that are a little bit younger around your age?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of ways I'm still navigating it. So I have like a lot of things that I'm gonna have to figure out, especially whenever we get married. Like that, so I've heard is a very selfless thing, and it requires being selfless as often as you can in everything that you're doing, and that's what allows you to stay together. Uh, I think the best advice I heard from my dad was to marry your best friend. He said marry someone who is just like your best friend. Not he said don't do it for like the sex or whatever it is. He said don't do it for any of that. He said marry your best friend. That's gonna be what the main thing. He said that's what you need to be doing. Um, that is how you're gonna grow. That is how you're gonna stay together. You guys have to get along well. And if you don't feel like you get along well, then that's not gonna be that relationship's not gonna last. And I was like, yeah, that's some really good advice. So I think find someone who you get along really well with, not just because they're attractive or whatever it is. It's like find someone you get along well with and spend some time getting to know that person. And if you feel like that is the right person and you feel like you could spend the rest of your life with them, then make that commitment. And it's challenging. It's kind of you'll be nervous, you'll be anxious. Like even whenever I was proposing like last weekend, I was like, oh, like I'm nervous and I'm like shaky and it's like weird. But even through all that, it it's the right thing to do, because it's just like, this is the person who I want to spend the rest of my life with. And once you understand that, once you know that, and once you start dating in a way that acknowledges that, once you start like pursuing someone or searching for someone to date in a way that's like, I want to pursue this person and date them because I want to spend the rest of my life with them, that is a completely different gear change than just like, oh, I just want to like just date just so I can date and hang out and this is cool. It's like, no, like, date with purpose, and try to spend time getting to know that person. And if you feel like that is the person for you, then find someone who supports you and loves you and is selfless in their actions. And yeah, that's the biggest thing that I've learned so far through this process. But I don't know. Like, I'm honestly, like, I'm still trying to navigate it too. Like, I'm not married yet. I'm just engaged, so I still have a lot of things that I'm going to have to learn. And I'm only 22 right now. I'll be 23 in April. So it's like, I'm still very young, and there's going to be a lot of learning experiences through this whole thing. And I'll have to look toward the older people who I know that have stayed together in marriage and ask them advice, and work with just figuring out what makes marriages last, and talk to the elders in my church. And that's going to be the most important things that I'm going to have to keep in mind as I'm going throughout this whole process.
So what's next for you, Brock, as far as after school and life in general? What are you looking forward towards? What are you working towards at the moment?
I don't know. Is that a good enough answer? Uh, there's a lot of different things. I think one of my favorite analogies that I've heard is that, well, it's not even not really an analogy, but one of the favorite things I've heard was out of this book that I read a few weeks ago. I've had it forever. I read part of it maybe like 3 years ago, and then I kind of set it down and I didn't think about it, and then I picked it back up and I was like, whoa, this is actually a really good book. It's called Creativity Inc. It's by the creator of Pixar, Ed Catmull, and he talks about the entire keeping creativity involved in Pixar, and what made Pixar work, and how were they able to stay creative and stay innovating and stay at the top of the market, and how were they able to not be complacent in where they were, and how are they able to continue moving forward. And one of the things he says is that balance is only found in action. So your only way you're going to find balance is by taking action. So by understanding this, I was like, okay, if balance is only found in taking action, it's kind of like riding a bike. So in my mind, as I'm moving forward throughout this next thing in life, I'm gonna hop on this bike, and I'm not sure where I'm gonna go. I don't know where the bike's going, but I'm gonna hop on this bike, and I'm gonna find balance by taking action. And whatever the trail in front of me is, that's where I'm gonna go. And um, I think that's really the only way to figure it out. And that's how I figured out most of my stuff in life, is just by moving towards something, by taking action, as opposed to sitting down and just waiting for life to happen. To me, it's like, I'm going to continue moving forward and taking these actions in life. And uh, yeah, there's just a lot of uncertainty in where I'm going next, and it'll probably be something creative. I'll probably continue making YouTube videos. I'll probably continue trying to grow the brand. I might step into creative director role for a few different companies that I'm talking to right now, or step into marketing someplace and take one of those positions in maybe more of a corporate work environment, maybe something that's more of like an owner based thing. I'm not really sure yet. I don't know what the future holds, but there's a few different opportunities on the table. And I think as I continue to navigate life and the different things that it's going to throw at me over the next couple of years, I'm just going to have to figure that out in motion as I'm riding that bike and getting on that bike and moving forward. So that's probably where I'm going now.
So, Brock, where can people find you if they would like to follow your journey or follow you just in your everyday life?
Yeah, so on Instagram, bkelly5192. You can probably link it in the show notes or link it in the description, however you want to do that. And then on YouTube, I think it's at the Brock Kelly is what my YouTube handle is. But you can just look up Brock Kelly on YouTube and it'll pop up. And I think the same goes with Instagram and stuff. Instagram is going to be like the Daily Mile. YouTube's going to be like longer form vlogs. A lot of it revolves around running, and a lot of it revolves around my experiences at track meets and just simple vlogs and things. I actually just got a new camera. I don't know. I first experience with it. I don't know if I like it or not. Hold up. So I got the Panasonic Lumix, which is a pretty big camera, and I don't really know how I feel about it yet. It feels I had a Sony A7 III, and I liked my Sony, I I don't know. I was like I heard the Lumix was really good, so I wanted to buy the Lumix, and I just got this thing, and now I'm gonna try to be making some cool videos with this, but I don't really know how I feel about it yet. So, um, yeah, kind of a tangent, but
And disclaimer, this video is not sponsored by any of those
no, it's not
cameras. I
sponsored by
wish they
anything.
were. Well, I want to give a special shout out to Austin Dalquist. He's been a longtime friend, supporter, and he made this connection possible. Brock, I want to again thank you for joining me on this podcast. Guys, if you enjoyed this, please give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Please go check Brock's YouTube and his Instagram stuff as well. He's a really great guy if you haven't already noticed, and has a great following. And then he has so many things going for him as well. So if you guys enjoyed this, though, want to watch more episodes like this with people like Brock, please let me know down in the comments. And until next time, I'll see you on the other side.